Yo, what's up guys? So today I'm going to be coding chess. I mean, obviously I'm not going to code everything about it. We're just going to start in small chunks, okay? So we got to figure out what we need this to do. So first, we need a board. So how can I do this? Well, what we can do is we can make a function that is called setUpBoard, and it will basically create our board and our pieces. So what I want to do is I want to make a list of lists. So we can call a list board, and we can just I call it has nothing in it right now. And I want to start setting up. I want to have 8 lists in it, and each list is a row. Okay, rank, right? So how can I do this? Well, I could start making a row for white special, like more like the white major pieces, white pawns, and then black pawns and black major pieces, and then I just need a blank row. So we can start with white major pieces. So I just created a really simple thing. I called it W rank, white rank, and I made white rook, white knight, and it's an N because king is also a K, so just a notation, you would write knight as an N. So white knight, white bishop, white queen, white king, white bishop, white knight, white rook. So that's pretty easy, right? Well, now let's put in the black rank, and that was pretty easy. We just copy and paste it over, and instead of a W, it's a B. Simple. Now, how can we set up the pawns? Well, we can make a W pawn list, and we can make a black pawn list. And I could just fill the list with WP 8 times and BP 8 times. So I want to just make an easy for loop in range of 8, and what it's going to do is it's going to white pawn list and to B pawn list. It's basically just going to add a pawn. So it's going to add WP, and to BP, or to B pawn, it's going to add BP. So that's pretty easy. And so what we get there is it basically fills up our W pawn rank and B pawn rank. Now, remember how I was talking about those blank rows? Well, what I can do here is, because obviously it's an 8 by 8 layout array for the board, I can also just make a blank row, so we can call it blank row, and say there's nothing in it. And also in this this loop, we can also just add a space to our blank row, and that makes it real easy. We can just do space. But of course, how all my pieces are 2 characters, I'm going to have a double space to make it the same size. Now once we're done with that, we just have to put it all together, and there we have it. So just for safe measures, I'm going to have it return the value of board, return the list of lists, so that we can move it more easily. So what we're going to do is we're going to make another function that will print the board, right? So we can call it pboard, and it's going to take an argument, which is board. So, which is just, the board we're going to be inputting. So how do we print it? Well, what I could do is we could just say for row in board, you could say print row. So if we were to do a function where we have, we can say board is equal to setup board. Setup board. Then what we can do is we can do pboard print board with the argument board. And if we were to run this, boom, it will look something like this. So it's something. We're getting there, but we want it to look more like this. Obviously, we can't get the shapes of the pieces. I don't really have that high resolution with text. And how we can do this is by, in between the rows, we can create lines. So using underscores or dashes to create lines. And to form columns, we can just use that one weird vertical line character on your keyboard. So let's try it. And one of the major things I noticed is I want to have the white on the bottom. So the issue here is that black's on the bottom. And because white is the first in the row, it ends up being printed at the top, which is not what I want. What we could do is we could just add, or just flip it around, so we could have the B rank first and then B pawns. Just flip the board basically, or flip the order that we add the ranks to the board. Or we could have it print the board from the last list to the first list, because I really want to keep the white rank in the order that it is, because it's easier to access, because obviously the white rank is the first rank, or and then the white pawn is the second rank, so I want to keep it like that so it's easily accessible from the board list. So let's try to print it backwards. How can we do this? Well, we need to figure out how many lists are in the list, and that's easy. There's 8, because it's an 8x8 board. So we can keep our, let's create a list number and set that equal to, and we're going to set that equal to 7, because when you're talking about elements in a list, it starts at 0. In this case, the 0th list is going to be the first list, and the 7th list is going to be the 8th list. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a for loop in range 8, so it's going to repeat 8 times, and it's going to print the board from last list to first list. So this should be pretty easy. We're just going to print board, so I can't spell, board of list number, and then what we need to do is we need to have it subtract 1. And how you can do that is list num minus equals 1, and that just sets list num to 1 minus its value minus 1. So it's pretty easy. And so what that should do is it should print the board just backwards, reversed order, which is what we want. And there we have it. See, now as you can see, we have white at the bottom and black at the top, which is what we want. But how can we fix it from looking like a list and really crappy? So what we can do is between rows and between elements, we can just create a line which would separate them and make it look more like squares. So what we're going to do is first we are going to create the lines in between the elements. Now how we can do that is we can do the join function and joining it with the lines in between. So let's do this. So I'm going to make a separate variable right here, and we're going to call it row, and that's going to be equal to the vertical line dot join of board of list num. And so what that's going to do is that's going to create that, it's going to turn that list into a string separated by these vertical lines. And then what we can do here is we can print row. There we go. So let's test that out. Now they're separated, and it's actually a lot more compact. It makes it look a lot better. Now what we need to do is we need to print a line in between the rows to make it look better. You know, now it just looks like columns. We want to turn it into squares. And how you can do this is immediately after we print our row, we can just print a line. So let's create a line row, and we can just create a loop. Let's start with just 25, make it even, and we can just to our line we can append a dash. So we could do an underscore, and I think in that case it would look more connected, but I think it would give it some unnecessary space, because underscores are, you know, at the bottom of the character area. So let's keep it in the middle with our dashes. And then what we're going to do is we are going to print line. So let's try that. Okay, so I see the issue here. What I did was I left it as a list and I didn't actually join it. So what we're going to do is we can call, what if we just call this underscore list, or we'll have to change more. So what we're going to do is we are going to create line string is going to be equal to, we're going to join the line with no spaces in between, and then what we're going to do is we're going to print line string, and that should fix it. And there we have it. So that's a nice easy 8x8 chessboard, and we can always clip the edges off. See how these edges are just a little too long, so we can always make it 24, and let's print that again, see how that looks. That's looking a little better. So that's how I created my chessboard using Python code. Next video I'm going to be working on being able to move the pieces, so put in a command and it will be able to move a certain piece to a certain spot. I'm not going to add the rules yet, so like what moves are legal and what moves aren't legal, just because that's going to make it a little more difficult and take a lot longer to make. So for now I'm just going to be working on how to move the pieces and not about the rules as much. But that's for another video. I'm probably going to post that middle of the week maybe. But yeah, that's kind of it. Peace.